Hey friends, Kevin Inoue here again from Fight Designer LLC. I want to take a little moment on my lunch break to talk about something before it gets too far away and before I forget about it, and that is live stunt shows. Now, I don't think I've talked about this before on this channel, but there's a lot of live event kind of shows where stage combatants and stunt people can get a lot of great experience, and a lot of them get a solid start to their career at places like this before they can move on to other things. Or it's a side hustle, or it's a gateway drug. So whether that's a Renaissance fair, or a touring arena show like Marvel Heroes Live, or the How to Train Your Dragon Live, one of those things goes on tour. Whether that's jousting at the Ren Fair or medieval times kind of places. Heck, even pro wrestling I would kind of count as a sort of live spectator event stunt show. And of course, we have them at our theme parks, so Disney World, Universal. Now, some of these have unique demands when compared to something like, especially film work, but also even live theater. They're repeated several times a day. They're usually outdoors, but not always feel like the arena shows. They're often in the round, which is much harder than proscenium for selling non-contact hits. So you can't get away with as much in terms of non-contact hits. They have to be really consistent, and if you're doing a show at Universal or Disney, you've got a very specific schedule to stick to. And so they'll actually often have a pre-recorded soundtrack that includes the sound effects, which means you've got to be right on the beat, because you can't just choose to take a half second to get there and nap a little bit later, like you would in live theater. But on the other hand, you don't have to do the nap because someone else is doing that for you, and then you don't have to get it fully in post because, again, it's pre-recorded. So as a part of the choreography, you got the little ting, ting, shing, all that stuff, all those sound effects, along with often a little bit of music, things like that. Now that's, again, it's a generalization. You're not going to have that as much at things like a Ren Fair, human chess match, or jousting, things like that. But a lot of the arena and theme park shows, you will. So, there is going to be a range. I was lucky enough to visit last month both Universal and Disney in California. I hadn't seen those before. I hadn't seen any of the Universal shows, I don't think. The Disney shows in California a while back, so before Star Wars and Marvel and things were a part of the Disney park experience. But it was interesting to me some of the differences between how Disney and Universal handled theirs. I haven't personally worked either. I have friends who worked at the Indiana Jones stunt show in Florida. And I've done Ren Fair type shows and other live events like that in front of an audience, but not the sort of slick studio polished high budget kind of thing. Now, obviously there's a lot of things you can't do when you're trying to create a cinematic stunt experience, because you can't swap out props or people and cut, tag, here's your double, at least not as easily. You have to hide it and do it real time. You got to do a whole long take, so it's a long take every time. You can't just do it in little bits and pieces and choose your best take. So there's going to be a little lowest common denominator that tends to happen with that, and that's just being realistic. It's not good enough to be able to get 2 or 3 good takes out of 5. You've got to be able to get 5 out of 5, or 99 out of 100 at least, right? So you have to make it sure that it's not pushing your limits too much, because you got to be super consistent and super safe. And there's things where you can't digitally erase the wires if you're doing wire work. You can't speed up the footage a little bit, or reverse things, or all these other tricks that we have in how we shoot things and how we edit things aren't available to you with a live show, which is really a challenge when you have something like the Marvel campus at Disney, or the Star Wars shows for that matter, because you're trying to imitate something that in most people's experience of it is heavily reliant on computer graphics. Superheroes doing their thing, that's hard to do live. We don't have superheroes. And so there's inevitably compromises that need to be made. And Disney, so here's one of my key differences I see. Disney wants you to believe the magic. It wants you to believe that this is a character. It's like it's catering to a younger child who will still believe that this person in a suit is actually Goofy, even though they can't talk. And even though, they got to be a really spoiled kid to be able to go regularly, because things are so expensive. But anyway, they're trying to pretend they are that character, and that they can do those things, right? They're in character as they break the fourth wall, but we're not acknowledging this as an actor. And so when you have a character who can do super things, how are you going to do that? I was able to catch some of a couple times in passing, the show that happens on the Marvel campus. And so in this, we've got You know, Black Widow, who is basically human, so that's a good choice to go with. But we've also got Black Panther, who's got super abilities. We've got Spider-Man in a different part of it. You know, we've got a couple characters who are supposed to have augmented abilities, and then you got your generic bad guys. Let's actually start with Spider-Man. So this is an interesting one because the whole act really runs the gamut. You've got this warm-up bit where it's basically just a guy doing parkour. It's not super impressive, and there's nothing super about it. Like, they're doing a good job of keeping it up high so that it's separated from the crowd. Don't have to worry about people in the way. You can pad things and no one will know because no one can walk up there and like poke at it. But it's just normal parkour, and it doesn't look very super. And to me, it seems like there's simple adjustments you could have made. So if you cast this with the intent to make it look like people are doing things humans can't do, don't just have it parkour. Like, build in one of those trampoline runways like Cirque du Soleil uses, for example, or circuses do. You could have done, or even just a section with a mini tramp or an air ram or something, so that you can get a better jump. Because the other jarring thing is you go from this very mundane, very human parkour exercise to this cutting edge stunt robot they've designed that can launch over the building and do these super flips. And there's nothing in between. It's really hard to believe that this is the same character because one is kind of slow and mundane and the other is superhuman. And there's nothing between those. It's such an extreme jump. There are also a couple bits where there's supposed web slinging using ropes, and those were fairly slickly done, like they actually mounted in kind of the right place. But you can still see when they clip in and clip out. Which takes me over to Black Panther, because this little bit here also uses some basic wire work. So we've got the idea of him climbing, but we can see him clearly clipping in and clipping out, and you can see the wire clearly. Yeah, there's some things you could have done differently, maybe even just like painting the wire so that it blends in a little more. I don't know. Sleight of hand, get the audience looking somewhere else while they clip in and clip out, build it into the choreography. Maybe when he gets to the top and jumps over the rail, someone's right there and grabs him from behind, and they're wrestling around a bit and they're really just unclipping him. So you don't have to say, hey, I'm like, oh, wait, let me, okay, hang on. All right, there we go. Now I'm done. Let me see the wire go away. I don't know. It's a little lazy. It could even be automated and just with a manual override. I don't know the safety things. I'm not a rigger. I just know that it looks kind of amateur. You know, if you want to see how movies are made, great. But if you're trying to pretend that this is magic, less so. The simple rope pull on the kick, you know, yeah, that's legit. Sure, that's fine. But a lot of this, yeah, a little underwhelming because we've built these expectations that are so above what humans can do. You got to find a way to be that, or it's going to be a letdown, right? It just isn't going to sell. You know, the sparks on the railing with the claws, sure, not bad. And we've seen things like that with lightsabers and all before, too, in the Star Wars shows. But what really gets people are things like the moving walkway that they had briefly in the Star Wars hotel thing, for like the force pull. Like, that's cool, and it's perfect for this kind of thing where it's up on a railing where you can't do anything about it. It allows us to have superhuman abilities hidden from the audience and how we get away with it, right? You could do something like that with like a treadmill for a super run up there if someone's supposed to be really fast, or again, mini tramps, things like that. Fairly easy to hide, looks cool, and if you actually hire gymnasts, you can get some pretty impressive stuff there. The Texas Swap is a great thing for these live shows. They do that with a Spider-Man. They have one doing the little parkour thing, robot flies over, different person walks out, and it's all a voiceover recording anyway, so it doesn't matter if they sound different. There's no reason they couldn't have done that also with some of the other characters, right? I mean, even Black Panther going up the wall wouldn't even have to be a real Black Panther if you're slick enough about your switches. That could be a really simple gag with a basic animatronic zipping up the wall and then coming out behind the box as someone else, you know? And then we don't have to clip in and clip out. I don't know. I feel like it was trying to be something that it set the goal really high. There's a really high bar to believe in magic and superpowers. And it's hard for that not to come across as lame. Whether you're trying to do a birthday party for kids with a superhero or LARPing a character who can throw fireballs or whatever. When you hit that realm of like, you can't actually do it, maybe you're better not trying. Which brings me to Universal. Now, the Universal stunt show is different in part because it's not necessarily trying to be known franchises. no one really watches Waterworld. I mean, they're not known characters, it's not a franchise, there's not celebrity impersonation going on. And it feels a lot more like a Ren Fair show. You've got the people working up the crowd, they're really talking, it's their real voices. It's not a pre-recorded thing. The sound effects, for the most part, aren't pre-recorded. It's done live. They're actually blowing up, bits of it's air pressure hits and gasoline, fake fireballs that, you can feel the heat, so it's real fire. But the thing about Universal is it's Universal Studios. They have a studio tour. You can see the sets. You can see the backlots. Like, the point of Universal is not that it is magic. The point of Universal seems to be that movies are all the magic you need. The magic is in how we make the movies. You see this a little bit in their rides, where they've been doing a lot more with integrating 3D projection things with the ride. So the studio tour now has places where you drive in and there's a wraparound 360 3D movie segment that's integrated with what you're happening, whether it's a Fast and Furious thing or dinosaurs or King Kong or whatever. So they're pushing the technology limits on the film, because that's what it's about, is the movie making, and integrating that really heavily with the ride. Transformers also is another one that did that. The Transformers ride, which was broken most of the day. I didn't get to do the Jurassic Park ride that's much hyped, because it was shut down for renovation, and of course they don't tell you that when you buy your ticket. It's just, it's closed all day. Waterworld. And I know someone who worked on this earlier, and it's, it seems like a fun gig, a legit gig, but you've got people very clearly doing real stunts. You've got high falls into water, you've got people on fire falling into the water, you've got fire stunts, you've got dives and people doing the jet ski under the water. You've got propane, I assume propane guns for like that Gatling gun and things like that. You've got blank loads with a lot of flash with shotgun. You've got fights, so it's a nice contained area, but it's a wraparound audience, so that you can kind of see that it's a show. It's not like a movie or presentation thing on a screen in front, and it's not like the wander kind of through in Disney World, where it's like you walk through and just happen to look up and people are doing something on that railing. This is a show. You are at an arena getting splashed because it's hot and feels good. And you're seeing these real stunt people, and it credits them. There's a sign out front. Here's the stunt people who are in the show, and here's things they've been on, probably from our studio. Right? Here's the TV shows and the movies you might have seen them in, which is great. I think it's great that they acknowledge them, and they acknowledge that. And that they lean into isn't this cool, the stuff we get to do when making movies? And so also that showed to me in the performances, because what I saw was stunt people enjoying doing stunts at Universal, whereas at Disney I saw people trying to do impressions, and it felt a little like that birthday party kind of thing sometimes, of, look, we can dress up as a princess and pay make-believe for $200 for a party, okay. They weren't enjoying the stunts. They weren't, it felt a little more mechanical, a little more phoned in, and they had less ownership of it because it wasn't theirs. So I really enjoyed the Waterworld stunt show. Now, I've heard there's rumors they might replace it. I know they used to do a Conan live stunt show there. One of my sword classes used some old aluminum swords from that, apparently. So it's been different things over the years, and yeah, Waterworld is kind of a dead franchise, but getting splashed is nice when it's hot out. But they could totally reskin that for something like they probably don't have the rights to it, but a Mad Max kind of thing or something. But it doesn't have to be Waterworld. But that's not what it's about, because it's not about, look, it's this famous character. It's about, look, let's watch stunt people do cool things, and I love that it celebrates that and leans into that. And frankly, for me, that was one of my favorite things at Universal when we got to see it. Maybe not for my kids, at least one of them was obsessed with Mario, and so of course Nintendo Land was the thing. But for me, definitely enjoyed that. Star Wars, I loved getting to see Batuu and Black Spire Outpost, and they did an amazing job, the Imagineers did, of creating the space. You walk in and it's there, and there's the Falcon and X-Wings and all these cool things, but not much actually happening. There's not much right now, at least when I was there, in terms of actual shows or performances, almost nothing there. And the main showcase ride was broken most of the time. So, that was a little disappointing. There's a great 4-hour video on all the mistakes that were made with the Star Wars Hotel, but also covering how a lot of that was supposed to be originally just there in Batuu and got hid behind a paywall. And that blew up for a number of reasons. I think there's missed opportunities and things that were disappointing there, but the space itself was awesome. I wish they made better use of it. So yeah, there's more that they could do, I think, in terms of using the space. If they'd actually had a space that was super designed for this show, the way the Waterworld was, then yeah, the Marvel folks probably could have done a little bit more with, like, you know, fake damage to the space or interacting more with things, you know, bending the bars or things like that, where you can make it look like there's actual stakes and things could happen, instead of just kind of going through motions. Maybe some of it's just the masks and that we can't see faces and it's all pre-recorded and it's kid-friendly and I don't know. But I would have loved to see a little bit more utilization of those tricks, because each venue has its own tricks, right? Movies, we can do swaps, we can do doubles, we can do speed tweaks, we can composite shots, we can CG stuff, we can have fake backgrounds, we can use lenses to compress the distance between things, we can Foley the heck out of it. Non-contact hits are easy. Live theater, you know, we got a higher suspension of disbelief. The audience knows it's real, and so you've got a bit of an advantage there. Knowing it's really the actor doing it is in itself impressive a little bit, and that it's live and right in front of you. But it's also harder to do as much because they're cast for their ability to do the whole thing, and it's not about a stunt show. Stunt shows, if it's in an installation piece like at Orlando or Anaheim or, you know, any of these installation pieces, build the set to make it work, right? Find those tricks. It doesn't have to be super high-tech robots. It can be as simple as an air ram or a mini tramp or these established technologies that we also use in film. But when you can build a set around that, what's padded, what's breakaway, but reattachable. You know, where's the breakaway crate that's just got magnets and so they can reset it easily between things or whatever, right? All of these tricks find a way to make it sustainable for an ongoing stunt show, and you got something cool. So I think Universal did that really well with Waterworld, with those explosions and the gunshots and the ramps and everything was obviously crafted very specifically for that show. And then they could just own it and play on that playground. I wish there was a way that we could get that same sense of ownership and stunt authenticity in the Disney stuff. But I haven't. The closest I've seen probably was in Florida with the Indiana Jones show to some degree, because they did a good job of sort of a highlights reel of the movie, but also the car show, which I don't think is there anymore. But they did a motor sports action show at Hollywood Studios for a while that actually did a pretty good job, I thought, of just showcasing car stunts. Car stunts are not personally my thing. I think they're awesome, but I thought that they did a great job of showing how we can do precision driving and things on fire and skidding out and all that stuff. That was the closest I've seen Disney come, but it was in part because it wasn't showcasing characters. They were able to set that aside and showcase the abilities. There's an artistry to it. It's not quite like Cirque du Soleil Ka, and that a lot of the violence actually doesn't sell to me. It's cool and it's artistic, but it doesn't read as violence because it's so obviously like a dance and a athleticism virtuosity thing rather than a violent intent and selling story kind of thing. But there is an artistry to doing stunts, and let people have their fun and do their thing. You know, Ren Fair's also, it's all over the place in terms of who gets hired and who does what. Sometimes it's meant to be lighthearted and comedic. Sometimes it's meant to be dramatic and serious. But it can never get too heavy because it's open to all ages and we never know who's wandering through. So anyway, you know, it's the season. If your fair local to you hasn't already ended, go out and enjoy it. Cheer people on. If it's not too hot and you live close to California or Florida, you know, if you can afford it, go see a show. And if not, find your local community theater and enjoy those shows. Watch a good movie. A lot of good stuff out there. But I love it when you can appreciate how well something makes use of the medium that it's in. How well does it fit? How well does it use the tools available to it to really be good at what it is rather than trying to be something that it isn't? It was something I was asked at a playwriting competition once when I turned in a script is, why do you feel like this needs to be a play and not a short story or a movie or something else? And it's like, that's a good question. Because there was a playwriting contest, so I wanted to submit. Not the best answer, of course. Things have to change. When you do an adaptation of a book into a movie, you need to change it so that it fits the venue. When you make a live action play out of a movie or a musical, you need to change some things to make it fit that. Stunt shows are a really interesting case study, and like all this other stuff, you got to figure out how do I adjust it to make the most of what we have available to us in this media. in this venue, and I love it when they do it well. So to all those of you who are involved in those, I salute you. Well done. Keep it up. Have fun. Stay safe. And I hope to see you later.